Hey everybody, Bridget Lynn Dolgoff, Conscious of Economics and Urban Farm Project. It is the morning and I'm having my jug of coffee. I have a lot to do. I'm in the hand weeding phase of my yard, which is not as bad as last year. You can go back and look at my videos from last year. And so this video, for those of you out there will understand this because I have to put it in a preface. So, yeah, because they like to take down all of my medical or herbal medicine type videos, which is fine. But I wanted to get some information out. Now, this video is for educational purposes only and could be 100% fictional story or not. Okay. Oh man, I don't know. Whenever the Zika thing came out, well, I guess maybe we have to go back further, okay? So if we go back and we look at, there was two major things that happened with the Spanish flu thingy, in my opinion. And that was that they were doing injectables, but back then they used like these metal things and they, would double dip, so weren't best at sanitation. But they would, draw the fluid in, inject, draw the fluid in, inject there. It wasn't so a lot of people don't know that they had those kinds of injectables back then. And they did, 100%. So, they gave injectable inoculations against whatever. I mean, back then, they didn't really have TV or anything else, so it was done to the military. And then the military was transported, kind of all over the world. So this is kind of fact. So we could, in my opinion, that would create like a bioweapon scenario that the individual could be a bio-release weapon. The other thing that happened during that time frame, especially like in places like America, pharmaceuticals were kind of pharmacies were kind of propping up, and kind of propping up in towns, on corners. And pharmacists were making all kinds of medicines, good, bad, indifferent. A lot of it was dangerous once it started moving away from herbal plants. But I even took a class on how to make old-fashioned pills from herbal remedies. It was pretty fun, but it's too labor intensive when you can grow the plant and drink the tea, okay? And it just gives people like a signature, like this is my pill and this is how my pill looks. So it could be the same pill that you made from herbal medicine that the pharmacist across the street makes, but yours might be square, right? And you may have a little bit more variation in your extractions. So yeah, so there are certain things, like for example, people love to buy like horehound throat lozenges, for when you're sick. Really helpful for the throat and tonsils and all that kind of stuff. And horehound is part of the mint family, so it has a square stem. And mint families are really easy to deal with because they pretty much grow prolifically. I say that, but I'm trying to incubate self-heal, and self-heal just doesn't seem to like me very much at this point, but I'm still fighting for it because I really need it in my apothecary. So those are, are kind of making a comeback. Now, what happened is that during the 1918 Spanish flu, in my opinion, and I've had to call people online to let them know about this kind of stuff because, history's like so far kind of removed, and people like me who are older, and like done a lot of research the old way before the internet and read a lot of the books and stuff that no longer exists today because, those have been wiped out too. One thing that happened was they introduced white willow into the pharmaceutics. And so they were captioning it with fever reducer. And it's where aspirin first got its start. It's the real aspirin, but couldn't be patented, so they've had to make it out of something else, which is like pretty much synthetic. Anyway, so here you have, in my opinion, bioweapons running around all over the world, the globe, because of injectables. And they are infecting people. And you have to remember, they were giving people inoculations, Native Americans, of smallpox on blankets. They were giving blankets as trade and barter, whatever else, and it had smallpox laced all over it. So it isn't just injectables, it can be anything. And the reason I'm bringing this point out is that, in my opinion, they have been doing this for such a long time that you have no idea exactly what the instrument of receivership might be. The shedding, let's just talk about like back to white willow. So white willow can reduce the fever, can do all that stuff. It, is an anti kind of coagulant, dilator. But the problem is that when you have some type of, and I don't even think viral is like the right word, you don't want to use anything that would reduce a fever. And so what would happen, if you look back at the history books and like doctors and some of their transcription notes on patients who got the Spanish flu, would say things like, administered aspirin, which would have been like white willow, as a fever reducer, and person recovered. 3 days later, they came back to the hospital with a hyperdrive flu, and we couldn't save them, and they died. So that means that basically the fever was blocked Fevers are really important. And your body producing a fever is your body trying to combat whatever the underlying infectious disease or whatever you want to call it, right? So, but that's another reason why a lot of people died during that period. So, injectables, let's just talk about injectables for dogs. In my opinion, what I've seen before the current injectables for humans, and they're also doing the, 2019, 2020 injectables for dogs. They're doing it to animals. I read an article about the Facebook founders, and they have actually since 2013 have been funding. They've been funding an organization that goes out and actually gives injectables to wildlife. Yeah, what could go wrong with that? No overview. Nobody, paying attention. It's pretty crazy, actually. Anyway, so before 2019, 2020, we used a term called shedding. And what that meant was that, and this is not public information, just like black labels are not public information. That's a whole other topic that I've tried to talk about, but, videos removed. And I fought at the legislature, in 2009 to help force, anyway. So sheddable means that you give a live virus, injectable, and it didn't matter whether it was a human or an animal. I had seen before, let's say around 2005, and remember that a lot of these injectables radically changed since 1991, okay? Regardless of how you feel about that. Anyway, so around 2005, I had a patient that called me, and I went over, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with the dog. And the dog had these weird lumps underneath its skin, and it was just not feeling good, and it was kind of swollen. It was having a hard time breathing and swallowing, but not so bad that, you would run it to the emergency. Well, it turned out that the guy had gotten a measles vaccination of some sort, a newer kind of upgraded one. And so my speculation, my opinion, because it was within the 10-day mark, that it had been transferred to the dog because they were sleeping together. And that's what would be sheddable. And so a lot of the human and animal injectables were transferable, shareable. So what they should have told you is that if your animal was vaccinated, that it should be quarantined away from family members, from inside your home for 7 to 10 days until the shed was done. And then same thing with humans. So, if you had your baby vaccinated, you may have wanted to, I know it sounds crazy, or if you had been injected, you may have wanted to make sure that you were quarantined away from your animals and other family members. But they don't really like to tell you this kind of stuff because in a lot of cases, they don't even know. I mean, I've had the luck to study with, some amazing, brilliant people in this world. I mean, beyond brilliant. Okay, so let's just talk about this. So there is like upcoming events that are going to be, in my opinion, attached to the Asian pandemic, and that the injectables most likely create bioweapon scenarios. Nowadays, the injectables do something that there are medical professionals that have termed it transmit, which means not sheddable where it stops, but it transmits long term and gets worse and worse and worse as the stuff is brewing. There was, and so then I'm just going to end with this because in my opinion, what I saw, which, how I've been putting this together. And so 2 years ago, so not this last winter, but or last spring, we had tons of snow last winter, not this last one, but the one before. And I was taking my dog for a walk in this huge vacant kind of area. And behind this housing development in this really small town, there were 15 dead baby goslings. Okay. Now, I came back, I took my dog home, and then I went in, I changed my clothes, went in, and went around because I was very aware that this could be, in my opinion, a setup. And so I went in and I walked around. When I got home, I literally took off my clothes and shoes that I was wearing, and I threw it all in the garbage, and then I went and took a shower. Because of the serious nature that I believed, in my opinion, of what I saw. So it was at the end of that winter. It was still super cold out, and it was the wrong time of year that baby goslings would be being born. And upon looking at the dogs with the goslings with my medical gloves and then a stick, and I was rolling them around, there were no animal puncture marks, there was no blood, there's no wounds. It appeared that they probably died from freezing to death. So upon further inspection, I'd never seen any type of geese in this area. So couldn't find a mom, couldn't find a dad, no nest, looked like they were let go, or they were already kind of dead and they were tossed out. I mean, it was just so bizarre, like the whole thing. So I immediately called our state, animal, wildlife, fish and game, and was talking to them on the phone about it. And the woman on the phone goes, "Oh my God, that sounds like, Asian pandemia." And so I said, "Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking," and gave her all the information. And then she said, "I'm going to hook you up with the state vet." And so I left him a message about to get back to me, the town that it was in, that the animals were still there, and that they needed to be picked up and they needed to be examined. I called and left a lot of messages. Not one message was returned. And because of that, I truly believe that he was in on it. My opinion, my opinion, my opinion. Well then, I haven't told this story a lot because it doesn't really matter to a lot of people. It's not important. It's a one-time event, you know. People get that science rationing where if the things haven't been examined, it's not so, or it has to meet, you know, 3-time minimum criteria before it's something, right? So, excuse me, I have like the worst allergies right now because of the cottonwood. Woo. And I'm pulling weeds. And I think the weeds are starting to manufacture a retaliation against me for eradication. So what happened recently was within the last 3 months, there was this article on TV, in the news on the internet, that basically Fish and Game down in the Las Vegas area was looking for this truck and horse trailer because they were caught releasing like 25 turkeys into the wild right out of the back of the truck. Here we go. Here's that bird thing again. Like, what the hell is going on? Why would you do that? Why would you do it secretly? If you weren't like involved. They had pictures of what the truck and trailer looked like, that they were actively looking for them. It was an investigation. Now, there has to be something wrong with those turkeys for it to be like in a formal investigation. Okay? So just saying. I think that the fact that those goslings were dead or had died and it was so cold out that the infectious disease didn't spread. And maybe those turkeys got caught. Maybe they got sick. Maybe they were wobbling. Who knows what the hell? It's really hard to tell. But things that you can think about is that if you have animals, say you have homesteady animals, turkeys, and all this other stuff, you have to watch other people coming onto your property. Like if you have friends that have a lot of fowl or other animals, that you have to ask them, you know, either to change their shoes and stuff like that when they come to your house, like have another pair of shoes in the car, or not walk around your property, you know, maybe not really invite them in the house. I mean, this is kind of at a point where we're going to have to really monitor what we're dragging around and where we've like picked it up. And also, in my opinion, stay away from injectables. Injectables for animals, injectables for people. And I would absolutely not buy chickens or ducks to raise that had been injected, because I'm not going to infect myself and infect my land. And so that's kind of like where I'm at. And then I've also noticed there's been a really big push by vets who are, okay, mind you, in my state where I'm at, we have a shortage of vets, right? But yet, and they're all so busy, like they can't see their patients that they have now, nor can they take on new ones but yet they're sending out emails about you coming in and, getting your animals their annual injectables. I can tell you, in my opinion, that all of the research that I've read out of Europe and these are real peer review, okay? In the US, not peer review. We call it ghostwriting, okay? Somebody's ghostwriting that information. But it says, like, if you say, for example, you're working at a zoo and you're dealing with an animal that has super rabies, okay, like bats. Maybe your job is the bat person. Okay, you may want to get a rabies vaccine every 5 years for that, right? But it's going to be rare. I'm not saying don't vaccinate your animals early on from parvo, maybe rabies, all this other stuff. But in my opinion, from the research that I've read, it states that, rabies lasts the lifetime of your pet. And so why do you have to take your pet in every year? Do you go in every year to get your measles vaccine? Do you go in every year to get your chickenpox vaccine? Your shingles? Oh, shingles is supposed to last forever, right? So we're not doing the math, but what we're doing is we have too many injectables that are going on all over the place that are causing kind of a bad viral, mutatable, craziness. So I'm just trying to do the skippity doo-dah around this stuff. And, if people want to contact me and actually have a real in-depth conversation, I would charge for that. And I charge about $100 for an hour, so of my time. But we could totally discuss that. We could also discuss, what kind of exemptions that you may need and where you might be able to get those exemptions from. And to be perfectly honest, the system is falling apart, okay, completely and totally. Which means that, next week your company could say, oh, we're closing, and you don't have a job. But yet you went out to conform to whatever medical procedure that your company may want you to have. And mind you, practicing medicine without a license is a federal crime. Okay, it's an international crime too. And practicing experimental medicine, that's why doctors get malpractice insurance to practice experimental medicine, right? And that it just gets paid off and it never becomes public record because the insurance company wheel and deal, along with medical boards and everything else, to pay off. And people are forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement, so it's never public record about exactly what's happened. Okay, that's all I've got for you. Just say no. Protect your property from virals and strangers and trespassers, and be careful about where you're going and walking and what you're dragging back to your homestead or your house. And just be mindful, right? We're just getting to a point in time where if you want to do this kind of stuff to hold on to your job, just remember that the whole economy is coming down. The US dollar, there's so many countries, 109 countries that have moved away from the US dollar, and it's not really the reserve currency in the world anymore. So use your brain. And sometimes the best thing to do is not participate, because your life depends on it. The lives of your animals depend on it. The cleanliness of your house and your land depend on it. And the wildlife don't need you spreading around your, whatever that you've gotten. So I've been monitoring my birds. I feed wild birds the best food I can. And I try to give them, bowls of clean water, because water's hard for them to get in the area. And I monitor, how many die, what their eggs and their babies look like, the status of their health. And so I'm doing my own monitoring to pay attention to what is going on. The first morning I wake up and there's dead birds everywhere, that's going to be when the doors of my house get shut. And I'm going to wait for a period of time until those birds thoroughly decay enough to where they're not infectious, and that I can go and clean them up and throw them away. So I will have to be on hazmat detail, and I have hazmat throwables. I have tons of gloves and everything else, and I will be doing, a thorough hazmat, if not burning them in a pit. So be careful. Less is more. Mindfulness and awareness are your God-given abilities. Critical thinking. What's going on? Why is this going on? What's happening? So be safe out there, and truth matters. And this has all been for entertainment purposes, and it's all been, in my opinion. All right, everybody. I'll talk to you later. Have a great day. Bye-bye.